Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome. I am here with a VR to my friend Avery Fawcett, and the tag is "Where are your decks?" I will link Avery's original video in the description box below. It's a tag with 5 questions, which I have written on a little piece of paper here so that I don't forget them. And the tag entitled "Where are your decks?" of course focuses on how we store our decks, where we keep them out, whether we like to keep them visible, how we carry them with us, and topics like this. So there's 5 questions, and I'll timestamp below, aspiring not to be too rambly. So the first question is, where do you keep your decks? And this is where I keep my decks. This is my bedroom, or a corner of it anyway. So you can see here, this wooden wall shelf is where I keep all of my tarot decks. This shelf was made by my father for me, and the 2 shelves here is all of the tarot decks that I have, and then the top shelf up here is mostly tarot related artwork. So I've got a couple of framed pictures here from the Marigold Tarot, from Dust to Onyx, and a couple of rocks and an incense burner and things like that on the top shelf there. But my tarot decks live in my bedroom on this shelf. And then this shelf here, this silver shelf, is actually a boot rack. It's a boot rack. The bottom shelf is larger, and then the shelves shrink up to this small size on the top. And this is where all of my decks that are not tarot live. So this little tiny top section that you can see here, this includes all of my playing cards are just here in this little tiny section, and then casting tools are here, like Ogham staves and journey tokens and dominoes and a couple of other things, James Eads geomancy coins, things like that. And then I've got 2 shelves down here that you can't quite see of all of my oracle decks are on the 2 shelves below. And then the bottom shelf, the large one that sits very close to the floor, I have a binder with spreads in it. I have a box that keeps my very small Lenormand collection in it. And I have a handful of guidebooks that I like to refer to frequently. So this is where I keep my decks, right in my bedroom where I can see them all the time. Question number 2 is, do you rotate decks or keep certain decks out? And for me, the answer to this is no, I guess. My tarot reading table is just off screen over here, in the same room. And at any given time on my table, where I do my journaling, where I do my morning kind of check-in with myself, do a daily draw, and so on, and do almost all of the readings I perform at home, I do on this table. On that table at any given time, I will have 1 or 2 decks out that I'm actively working with. Right now on my table, I have the Flow Tarot, the Lubanco Tarot, the Open Portals playing cards. I have 1 card out from the Animal Allies for my Animal of the Month, which is Polar Bear. I have 1 card from Sacred Incantations out as a message to remind me, and then I have a couple of cards displaying the moon phase and sign. So there's always something on my table, and there's always a couple of decks there that I'm working with, but generally I don't rotate out decks in, I think, a way that the question is implying. I know that a lot of folks will, pick, say, 5 or 6 decks that they want to work with for a season and put them all out, in a particular place that's more visible, for instance. I don't do this. All of my decks just live where they live, unless I'm actively working with them at any given time. So I don't really rotate decks. Number 3, do you carry decks on the go, use them outside, etc.? Yes, definitely carry decks on the go and use decks outside. I always have a deck with me anywhere that I'm going, just in case somebody wants a reading or I want to have a reading for myself. I always have a deck with me. And the default bag that I carry most days is just this little Osprey It's a waist pack, but I tend to carry it over my shoulder like that. It's a pretty small bag, so I tend to carry a mini or tinned deck. Right now in my bag I have the small version of the Next World Tarot. I will use decks outside. Generally speaking, when I'm reading outside, I'm reading on my back porch or something, so I'm not like going outside with the intention of doing a reading somewhere for the most part. There is a really big park very close to my house, just down the block, that's like a huge park. It extends like several towns over. It has a big part of the Trans-Canada Trail in it. It's a really beautiful, amazing park that you've seen in some of my videos when I'm talking about trees. I sometimes will take cards specifically there to read, but for the most part, if I'm reading outside, I'm just reading on my deck. But I always have a deck on the go. I always have a deck on the go. Question number 4. Do you have any favorite tools for storage and or transport? So I'll do transport first. I feel like no. When I'm transporting a deck, it's generally just in whatever bag I'm using. Most of the time that's the waist pouch. If I need something larger, like for a day, like a walk, like for a day or something, I'll usually have this, which is a sling shoulder pack as well. So it just goes, that's the wrong way actually. It just goes this way. So it has a pouch here that you could put your phone. You could put a deck there, I guess, right? If you wanted to, a small one, but it carries quite a lot. So I can carry a, water bottle and all different things that I want, and I'll carry a deck in there. If I'm going somewhere that's like a multiple day trip that is not camping. So like a multiple day trip where I'm maybe staying in a hotel, going away for the weekend, going to a family member's house or something like that, and I want to bring more tarot related items, then I do have this bag that's just a shoulder bag with a couple of pockets in it, and I will use this to carry, a couple of decks, a spread cloth, a journal, a pen, a good pen, a couple of little odds and ends, maybe my planner, things like that. If I'm going for a couple of days and I want to do that, that's not super often though. Usually I'm just carrying a deck in whatever bag I happen to be toting around, and those bags tend to be fairly small. So that's transport. Storage, I guess, the shelves are storage. That's where my decks live. I don't like having decks all over the house. I feel like I lose track of things. Sometimes there's a deck or two on my desk where I film my videos on my laptop, but for the most part the decks just live where they live. If I get a deck that has a box that I don't care for, or that is falling apart, or maybe a deck doesn't have a box at all, then I will get a bag for it. And I have a couple of different ones. I really like the Etsy store Ginkgo and the Crone, who makes these kind of wrap style bags that you could do a reading on this piece of the cloth. So I like those a lot. I have quite a few of those. I always am watching that shop to see if something comes that would suit a deck. I have a little list of decks that need pouches or bags for whatever reason. Some of them don't have a box or whatever. And if I see something on Etsy that kind of suits the personality of the deck, then maybe I'll pick it up. I do have a handful of Peggy bags from Sparks Creations. So I really like these little pouch style ones with the elastic. This really beautiful tree one perfectly suits the Great Lakes Tarot. That's what's in there. And it holds the box too, which I like, because then the cards are really protected. A lot of the decks that are on the shelf though are just in the box that they came in. Like if something is in a decently sturdy box that is not massive, then it just stays in whatever it came with. Something like the Great Lakes Tarot, I wanted to put a pouch around it because the lid will fall off if I just put that in a backpack, but for the most part, if something has a sturdy box, I just leave it the way that it is. So that's storage. Now I have, of course, lost the questions. Okay. Question number 5 is, question number 5 is the interesting kind of analysis question, I think. Question number 5 is, how has the way you organize, store, and rotate your decks facilitated your practice or not? How has it evolved over time, and what have you learned? So I would say it has definitely changed over time. For a second, I tried to organize my decks alphabetically. For books, I'm mostly an alphabetical by author shelf organizer. For decks, I very quickly realized that this was not this was not how I wanted to organize things. So on the wooden shelf over here, I do have some kind of broad sections. The top right is, broadly speaking, kind of queer, feminist type decks. The section below it is kind of very broadly speaking, nature-based, animals, landscapes, etc. And then on the far side, the top are kind of very Smith-Waite based decks, or Smith-Waite decks. And then below it is Marseille and Pips. Now, obviously there's overlap between the categories of Smith-Waite, Marseille, Pips, nature, and queer, but these are kind of the main themes of decks that I tend to gravitate towards, so it works. And then what happens in the middle of the shelf where those things meet is just, it is always in flux. I don't have every deck in a very, very specific spot. I will take something else out and put something in its place, and I can find things. I don't feel like I have so many decks that I don't know what's there. And I'm generally very careful about picking the bags and pouches and things that I get so that I will know from the outside without looking what the deck in question is. So I know, I do not have to look that this pouch, which is another Ginkgo in the Chrome pouch, this has Afro Tarot 2 in it. I don't have to look. I know that that's what's here. And I think that that's important for me because I want to know where everything is. I also have found, I really like having my decks visible. Before my father made the shelf, I kept my decks in a trunk. And I have the trunk, you can't see the trunk, but it's below, it's sitting below there. And the trunk has things like extra tea lights and, chime candle holders and dried herbs and some extra spread cloths, old full journals, things like that are all in there. For a while I thought I'll just have, all things, magical or ritual or spiritual practice or any of this will all live in the trunk. But I didn't like things being stacked on top of each other. I didn't like not being able to see them. So that is definitely something that I think is important for me. I want everything to be fairly visible. And I also want my decks to be all in one place. So I don't have a number of decks that I want to have in my collection. I don't have a collection size that I think is perfect for me or anything like this, but I do like the shelf to be pretty easily navigable, and I do not want to have the decks in all different places because the shelf is full. I could always start putting decks on the top where the pictures and artwork and things are now if I wanted to, and that would give me a lot more space, but I don't want things all over the house. I like things to be organized, and I also really like that my shelves are right by my reading table because then I can pick a deck based on kind of mood. Before I have particularly a larger reading for myself, I go to the shelf and I choose what I want to work with. And I have things sorted by kind of system. So the tarot is all on one shelf, the oracle's together, the playing cards are together. So if I want to pair a tarot and an oracle, I know where I'm going. I don't tend to do that for daily draws. I will tend to work with a particular deck for a couple of weeks, and I'll just keep a couple of decks out and I'll use them for daily draws. I don't pick a new deck for a daily draw every morning. But when I'm doing something bigger, like on a full moon or a holiday or something, I pick by feel, you know? And doing that, I like to be able to see everything. And I do like having the tarot and the oracle separate. I do work with them a little bit differently. I sometimes like to pair them, so I do have, for example, decks by the same creator. Like if a creator has done a tarot and an oracle, like Anima Mundi Tarot and Nocturna Oracle, for example, like they're by the same creator and the same artist, but I don't store them together. One is on each shelf because one is tarot and one is oracle, and I will look at those and look for those at different times. So that is good. I have tried the rotating decks. I've tried keeping decks out on my table more, but mostly I just want maximal table space. So I don't like leaving like 6 or 7 decks out on the table because it just cuts down on the amount of reading space I have. And so I do tend to prefer, just keeping the decks on the shelf and going to the shelf when I need them. I have a little cart over beside the reading table. There's just like a small shelf thing with wheels on the bottom. And on there, I will keep the boxes of any decks that I have out. So like the Flow Tarot is sitting on my table right now. The Flow Tarot's box is over on that little cart. So I know, when I go to put it away, the box is there. I put it back in the box. I put it back on the shelf. Done. So everything is together. Everything is, visible and navigable. And that is how I like to store my decks. That is where my decks are. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Avery, for starting the conversation. I hope to see more VRs. I would love to see your tarot shelves or boxes or bins or however you store your decks, or let me know in the comments what you think about deck storage, transport, shelves, and so on, and what's important to you in terms of where you keep your decks in your home. I'll see y'all again soon. Bye.